Forget everything you think you know about the Middle Ages. No, it wasn't all knights in shining armor and princesses in towers. For most people, life was something else entirely. So let's travel back in time, not to a grand castle, but to a small smoky hut in the English countryside. The year is 1350, just after the Black Death has torn through Europe. Let's spend a day with a family of peasants, the backbone of medieval society, and see what their world was really like. The first sound isn't an alarm clock, but the crow of a rooster, piercing the pre-dawn gloom. Inside a humble wattle and daub cottage, a family is stirring. There's John, the father, his hands already calloused and rough from years of labor. His wife, Agnes, is already up, coaxing the embers in the central hearth back to life. Their children, young Thomas and little Eleanor, are still huddled under a coarse wool blanket, sharing the warmth with a few chickens that also shelter inside. There's no morning coffee or leisurely breakfast. The first task is to tend to the animals. John heads out to the small patch of land they rent from the local lord. He has to check on their ox, their most prized possession, and a few sheep. Agnes takes a bucket to the communal well, a daily ritual and a chance to catch up on the village gossip. She also scatters some grain for the chickens. Their home is a single room, dark and filled with the perpetual smell of wood smoke, animals, and damp earth. The floor is just packed dirt, maybe strewn with some reeds to keep the mud down. A rough-hewn table and a couple of stools are the only furniture. Light filters in through two small, unglazed windows, which are just holes in the wall with wooden shutters for the cold nights. It's crowded, it's smelly, but it's home. Breakfast, or what passes for it, is simple and quick. It's usually pottage, a thick, stew-like soup made from whatever vegetables are on hand, peas, onions, cabbage, boiled with oats or barley. Sometimes, if they're lucky, there's a piece of dark, dense rye bread baked in the communal village oven. Meat is a rarity, reserved for special feast days. They eat quickly, standing or sitting on the floor. Every minute of daylight is precious. After their meager meal, the real workday begins. As a villain, John doesn't own his land. He works a few strips in the vast, open fields of the manor, but several days a week he owes labor to the Lord. This is called boon work. Today he's off to the Lord's domain, the land set aside for the Lord's direct profit. He'll be plowing side by side with other men from the village, using a heavy wooden plow pulled by a team of oxen. It's backbreaking, relentless work from sunup to sundown. There's no machinery, no shortcuts, just pure muscle power. Agnes's day is just as demanding. Her domain is the cottage, and the small garden plot next to it called a croft. Here she grows the vegetables for their pottage. She spends the morning weeding, watering, and chasing away pests. Then it's on to other chores. Spinning wool into thread is a constant task, something she can do even while watching the children. She might need to mend their simple woolen tunics, brew some weak ale, which was often safer to drink than water, or make cheese from the milk of their sheep. Her work is never done. And the children, they work too. Young Thomas, maybe 10 years old, is out with his father. His job is to walk ahead of the plow team, goading the oxen with a long stick, keeping them moving in a straight line. Little Eleanor, who's only 6, helps her mother. She might be sent to gather firewood from the woods, fetch water, or help with the spinning. Play is a luxury, but you might see children sneaking in a game of tag or rolling a hoop when the adults are unlooking. Education is out of the question. Reading and writing are skills for clerks and nobles. Around midday, work pauses for a short break. John and Thomas won't come home. Agnes will likely bring them their lunch in the fields. Another hunk of bread, maybe some cheese, and a flask of ale. They'll eat quickly, sitting on the earth, before the bailiff, the Lord's manager, urges them back to work. There are no weekends, no holidays, except for the many religious feast days dictated by the church calendar. Life is a cycle of labor, governed by the seasons and the demands of the Lord. The church is the center of village life, both spiritually and socially. The priest is a powerful figure, and everyone is expected to attend Mass on Sunday. The church is also where you hear news, celebrate baptisms and marriages, and mourn the dead. The fear of God and the promise of heaven are powerful motivators in a life filled with hardship. People pay a tithe, a tenth of their produce, To the church, another burden on their meager resources. As the sun begins to sink low in the sky, John and Thomas trudge home, exhausted. The smell of wood smoke hangs heavy in the air as every family prepares their evening meal. It's more pottage, perhaps, with an egg thrown in for extra protein if a hen has been generous. The family gathers around the hearth, the flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls. This is a time for quiet talk, for Agnes to finish her spinning, for John to repair a tool. But the day isn't over yet. After the meal, the animals must be brought in and secured for the night. The fire needs to be banked carefully to preserve the embers for the morning. Then, as darkness falls completely, the family prepares for sleep. There are no lamps or candles for peasants. Burning them would be an unaffordable luxury. When the sun goes down, their world shrinks to the confines of their small, dark hut. They climb onto their straw-filled mattresses on the floor, pulling the scratchy wool blanket over them. Sleep offers a brief respite from the toil and the anxieties of their life. Will the harvest be good? Will they have enough to pay the rent and the tithe? Will they stay healthy? In 1350, with the memory of the plague still fresh, sickness and death are constant worries. Life is fragile, and survival is a daily struggle. And so, as the village falls silent, our medieval family sleeps, ready to wake at dawn and do it all again. Their life may seem incredibly hard to us, and it was. But it was also a life of community, of deep faith, and of incredible resilience. These were the people who fed the kingdom, who built the cathedrals, and whose lives formed the very fabric of the medieval world. Their story is a vital part of our own history. Thanks so much for joining me on this trip back in time. If you found this glimpse into medieval life fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical periods you'd like to explore. See you next time. As weeks pass in medieval England, daily life continues in a steady rhythm shaped by land, weather, and faith. Morning mist settles across the countryside once again. Fields stretch quietly beyond the small village, divided into narrow strips of farmland assigned to different families. These open fields are shared spaces, yet each household knows exactly which rows they must cultivate. There are no fences separating most crops. Trust and tradition maintain order. Before sunrise, farmers gather simple tools, wooden plow handles, iron-tipped hoes, woven baskets for seeds. Horses or oxen are led slowly from barns, their breath visible in the cool morning air. The plow moves heavily through damp soil. It is not a fast process. Each line must be carved carefully, guided by hand strength and animal patience. Mud clings to boots. Fingers grow cold before the sun rises high enough to warm the earth. The sound of metal scraping soil repeats steadily. Repetition becomes comfort. Nearby, women tend small kitchen gardens beside their homes. These gardens provide cabbage, onions, beans, and herbs used for cooking and basic medicine. Herbs are extremely important. Mint for stomach discomfort, rosemary for preservation, lavender for calming sleep. Knowledge of plants passes quietly from mother to daughter. Children carry water from the village well. The well is a central meeting place. Stone surrounds its circular opening, worn smooth by generations of hands pulling ropes. Conversations happen here, daily small updates about livestock, weather, and village happenings. Laughter sometimes echoes briefly, then fades. By mid-morning, the village church bell rings softly. The church stands at the center of medieval life. Built from heavy stone, its walls feel cool even in summer. Inside, light enters through small stained glass windows, coloring the stone floor in soft reds and blues. Faith shapes routine. People pause work briefly to offer prayers, not out of fear but from habit and tradition. The church provides structure in a world without newspapers, clocks, or modern government systems. Time itself feels slower. Seasons matter more than hours. Spring means planting. Summer means tending. Autumn means harvest. Winter means survival. As summer approaches, fields grow vibrant green. Grain sways gently beneath steady winds. Farmers inspect crops carefully, scanning for signs of disease or pests. A single failed harvest could mean hunger during winter months. There are no supermarkets. Everything depends on land. Afternoons bring physical exhaustion. Hands blister from repeated friction against wooden handles. Backs ache from bending. Yet work continues without complaint because it must. In shaded areas, brief rests occur, bread is shared, water is passed between workers. Sometimes small pieces of cheese provide additional strength. Silence often replaces conversation. Energy is conserved. Inside the village, craftsmen continue specialized trades. The blacksmith's forge glows brightly even during daylight. Sparks fly as iron is shaped into horseshoes, nails, and farming tools. The rhythmic clang of hammer against metal echoes through narrow dirt streets. Nearby, a carpenter shapes timber beams for roof repairs. The scent of fresh-cut wood fills the air. Every object is handmade. Nothing is mass-produced. Clothing, too, requires constant attention. Spinning wool into thread takes hours. Weaving fabric on wooden looms demands patience and rhythm. Women sit near open doorways where sunlight provides necessary illumination. Needles move slowly through cloth. Repairs are constant. As the sun lowers, shadows stretch long across farmland. Workers gather harvested bundles carefully, stacking them into tall formations for drying. Preparation for winter begins months in advance. Evening approaches, church bells ring once more. Smoke rises from cottage rooftops as fires are rebuilt inside central hearths. Dinner smells drift gently between homes. Thick vegetable pottage simmers again. Sometimes fish caught from nearby rivers adds flavor. Families eat from shared bowls. There are no forks, only wooden spoons. After eating, evenings remain quiet. Some villagers gather outside briefly during warmer months. They sit on wooden benches, speaking softly about upcoming festivals or concerns about weather patterns. Music occasionally fills the air, simple flutes or small drums during celebrations, but most nights are calm. Darkness arrives fully once the sun disappears. There are no streetlights to soften night. Lanterns flicker briefly before being extinguished to save oil. Stars appear clearly overhead. The Milky Way stretches wide above open countryside, brighter than most modern eyes could imagine. Inside homes, families prepare once more for rest. Blankets woven from wool are layered carefully. Children fall asleep quickly after long days of physical labor. Adults remain awake a few moments longer, staring at fading firelight dancing across ceiling beams. The fire grows smaller, the room grows darker. Outside, wind moves softly across fields readying for another day. And once again, medieval England settles into deep, quiet sleep beneath an endless sky. As winter settles fully across medieval England, the days grow even shorter. Sunlight appears late in the morning and fades quickly by afternoon. Frost remains on rooftops long after sunrise, refusing to melt beneath weak seasonal light. Inside cottages, mornings begin more slowly now. The cold makes movement difficult. Before anyone leaves their blankets, they listen carefully to the wind outside. Strong winds mean snowdrifts may have formed overnight against doors and walls. The father rises first once again. He moves quietly toward the hearth where last night's embers rest, beneath gray ash. Carefully he blows gently, encouraging faint orange light to return. A small spark appears, then another. Soon, thin flames begin climbing across stacked kindling. The fire must never fully die during winter if possible. Restarting from nothing in freezing temperatures is difficult and dangerous. Warmth slowly spreads across the room. Children remain wrapped in wool blankets, reluctant to leave the only comfortable place in the house. Outside, snow blankets the village completely. Paths between homes are barely visible. Footprints from yesterday have already disappeared beneath fresh powder. Villagers step outside carefully, boots sinking deep with each step. The air feels sharp inside the lungs. Every breath reminds them of winter's strength. Livestock care becomes the first priority. Animals cannot graze beneath snow-covered fields. Stored hay must be rationed carefully. Barn doors creak open slowly. Inside, cows exhale warm steam into cold air. Chickens huddle close together for shared warmth. Feeding takes longer during winter. Water troughs sometimes freeze overnight and must be broken open with small tools. The repetitive sound of ice cracking echoes softly within barns. Back inside cottages, meals grow heavier. Stews are thicker now, designed to provide more energy against cold. Salted meat sliced thinly stretches across multiple meals. There are no fresh vegetables at this time. Only preserved supplies remain. Families eat slowly near the fire, conserving both food and fuel. Outside, most fieldwork has stopped entirely. Instead, winter tasks focus on maintenance. Broken tools are repaired carefully indoors, wooden handles sanded smooth, iron blades sharpened beside the hearth. Women spin wool continuously, preparing new garments or reinforcing older ones worn thin by years of use. Clothing layers become essential. Linen undergarments, wool tunics, heavy cloaks fastened with simple brooches. At night, these layers are not fully removed. Sleeping in partial clothing helps conserve warmth. Evenings during deep winter feel endless. Darkness arrives before most daily tasks are complete. Lantern light flickers briefly before being extinguished to save oil. Families rely primarily on firelight. Shadows move slowly across walls as flames shift direction. Storytelling increases during these weeks. There is more time indoors. Elders recount memories of winters even harsher than this one. Stories of frozen rivers, failed harvests, or distant lands where cold lasted longer. Children listen quietly. Fear is rarely spoken directly, but everyone understands the importance of survival. Outside, snow continues falling softly on some nights. Wind sometimes grows violent, pushing against cottage walls with sudden force. Roof thatching is inspected regularly to prevent leaks. Snow must be brushed away from entrances to prevent being sealed inside. Despite hardship, there is rhythm: morning fire, animal feeding, tool repair, evening meal, night rest. Repetition creates calm. On clear nights, when wind finally settles, the sky becomes breathtaking. Stars appear brighter against the dark winter sky than at any other time of year. The air feels still and almost fragile. Footsteps crunch distinctly across frozen ground. Occasionally, distant wolves howl from far-off forests. The sound carries across open fields, reminding villagers that nature remains powerful and untamed. Inside, however, safety holds. Fire crackles gently. Children breathe steadily in sleep. Adults remain awake a few moments longer, staring into embers glowing softly red and gold. Winter tests patience. But patience grows stronger with each passing night, and so the deepest weeks of cold pass slowly, calmly, one quiet day at a time. Medieval England rests beneath frost and star-filled skies, enduring, waiting, surviving. As winter settles fully across medieval England, the days grow even shorter. Sunlight appears late in the morning and fades quickly by afternoon. Frost remains on rooftops long after sunrise, refusing to melt beneath weak seasonal light. Inside cottages, mornings begin more slowly now. The cold makes movement difficult. Before anyone leaves their blankets, they listen carefully to the wind outside. Strong winds mean snowdrifts may have formed overnight against doors and walls. The father rises first once again. He moves quietly toward the hearth where last night's embers rest beneath gray ash. Carefully he blows gently, encouraging faint orange light to return. A small spark appears, then another. Soon, thin flames begin climbing across stacked kindling. The fire must never fully die during winter if possible. Restarting from nothing in freezing temperatures is difficult and dangerous. Warmth slowly spreads across the room. Children remain wrapped in wool blankets, reluctant to leave the only comfortable place in the house. Outside, snow blankets the village completely. Paths between homes are barely visible. Footprints from yesterday have already disappeared beneath fresh powder. Villagers step outside carefully, boots sinking deep with each step. The air feels sharp inside the lungs. Every breath reminds them of winter's strength. Livestock care becomes the first priority. Animals cannot graze beneath snow-covered fields. Stored hay must be rationed carefully. Barn doors creak open slowly. Inside, cows exhale warm steam into cold air. Chickens huddle close together for shared warmth. Feeding takes longer during winter. Water troughs sometimes freeze overnight and must be broken open with small tools. The repetitive sound of ice cracking echoes softly within barns. Back inside cottages, meals grow heavier. Stews are thicker now, designed to provide more energy against cold. Salted meat sliced thinly stretches across multiple meals. There are no fresh vegetables at this time. Only preserved supplies remain. Families eat slowly near the fire, conserving both food and fuel. Outside, most fieldwork has stopped entirely. Instead, winter tasks focus on maintenance. Broken tools are repaired carefully indoors, wooden handles sanded smooth, iron blades sharpened beside the hearth. Women spin wool continuously, preparing new garments or reinforcing older ones worn thin by years of use. Clothing layers become essential: linen undergarments, wool tunics, heavy cloaks fastened with simple brooches. At night, these layers are not fully removed. Sleeping in partial clothing helps conserve warmth. Evenings during deep winter feel endless. Darkness arrives before most daily tasks are complete. Lantern light flickers briefly before being extinguished to save oil. Families rely primarily on firelight. Shadows move slowly across walls as flames shift direction. Storytelling increases during these weeks. There is more time indoors. Elders recount memories of winters even harsher than this one. Stories of frozen rivers, failed harvests, or distant lands where cold lasted longer. Children listen quietly. Fear is rarely spoken directly, but everyone understands the importance of survival. Outside, snow continues falling softly on some nights. Wind sometimes grows violent, pushing against cottage walls with sudden force. Roof thatching is inspected regularly to prevent leaks. Snow must be brushed away from entrances to prevent being sealed inside. Despite hardship, there is rhythm: morning fire, animal feeding, tool repair, evening meal, night rest. Repetition creates calm. On clear nights, when wind finally settles, the sky becomes breathtaking. Stars appear brighter against the dark winter sky than at any other time of year. The air feels still and almost fragile. Footsteps crunch distinctly across frozen ground. Occasionally, distant wolves howl from far-off forests. The sound carries across open fields, reminding villagers that nature remains powerful and untamed. Inside, however, safety holds. Fire crackles gently. Children breathe steadily in sleep. Adults remain awake a few moments longer, staring into embers glowing softly red and gold. Winter tests patience. But patience grows stronger with each passing night, and so the deepest weeks of cold pass slowly, calmly, one quiet day at a time. Medieval England rests beneath frost and star-filled skies, enduring, waiting, surviving. Step into the biting cold of a medieval English winter. Outside the stone walls of a great castle, the world is hushed, blanketed in a thick layer of snow. The sun, a pale disk in a gray sky, offers little warmth. For the villagers huddled in their small, timber-framed homes, this is the lean season, a time of survival. Let's imagine a family: a farmer named Thomas, his wife Ilara, and their 2 children. Their days start before dawn. The first task is to stoke the central hearth, the single source of heat in their one-room house. Smoke stings the eyes, clinging to the damp, thatched roof. Breakfast is meager: a thin porridge of oats, maybe a heel of dark, dense bread saved from the last harvest. There's no fresh milk. The cow is dry until spring. Their cottage is a simple wattle and daub structure. Gaps in the walls are stuffed with moss and rags to keep out the relentless wind, but the chill seeps in through the floor and the single, shuttered window. The family shares this cramped space with their most valuable livestock, perhaps a pig or a few chickens, their warmth a small but welcome addition against the bitter cold. The smell is, earthy to say the least. Thomas spends his days performing winter duties for the lord of the manor. He might be repairing fences broken by the weight of the snow, chopping firewood in the lord's forest, or threshing the last of the grain in a cold, drafty barn. Every swing of the axe, every lift of the flail is a battle against the cold that numbs his fingers and toes. He wears woolen trousers and a tunic, perhaps a rough cloak, but it's never enough. Frostbite is a constant threat. Meanwhile, Ilara's work is inside, but no less grueling. She grinds flour with a heavy hand quern, a physically demanding task that takes hours. She mends worn-out clothing by the faint light, her fingers stiff with cold. She might be pickling the last of the autumn cabbages or salting a piece of pork, precious tasks to ensure they have something to eat in the coming weeks. The children, if not helping, are huddled by the fire, playing quiet games with carved wooden toys or stones. There's no school, just the endless wait for spring. Food is a constant worry. The pantry holds salted fish, dried peas, and root vegetables like turnips and carrots stored in the cold earth beneath the floor. A stew bubbles over the fire all day, a thin broth flavored with a few vegetables and maybe, if they're lucky, a scrap of bacon. Every meal is carefully rationed. To fall sick in winter is a death sentence, as the village healer has little more than herbal remedies to offer against pneumonia or influenza. Evenings are long and dark. With candles being a luxury, the family gathers around the dying embers of the fire. They tell stories, folktales passed down through generations, or sing quiet songs. It's a time for community, for shared humanity in the face of hardship, but it's also a time of fear. The howl of a wolf in the distance is a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the dark. By nightfall, they are all bundled together under scratchy wool blankets, sharing body heat, praying for the sun to rise again. Now, let's travel just a few hundred yards away, up the snow-covered hill, to the castle that dominates the landscape. Here, life in winter is a different reality altogether. Inside the massive stone walls, the great hall is a cavern of warmth and light. Two enormous fireplaces roar at either end, consuming logs that would last the village family for weeks. The air is thick with the scent of roasting meat, mulled wine, and wood smoke. Dozens of beeswax candles and torches illuminate the scene, casting flickering shadows on the rich tapestries that hang on the walls. These aren't just for decoration. They provide a crucial layer of insulation against the cold stone. The lord of the castle, Sir Reginald, and his lady Isabella preside over a life of relative comfort. Their day doesn't begin with a desperate scramble for warmth. They wake in a private chamber, in a large bed enclosed by heavy curtains, creating a warm, cozy cocoon. A servant enters to build up the fire in their personal fireplace, bringing warm water for washing. Breakfast is a feast compared to the village's gruel. It might include manchet bread made from fine white flour, cheeses, cold meats from the previous night's dinner, and ale or wine to wash it down. There's no concern about where the next meal is coming from. The castle's storerooms are overflowing with sacks of grain, barrels of salted meat and fish, casks of wine and ale, and preserved fruits, all part of the taxes paid by the very villagers shivering below. Sir Reginald's day is one of leisure and administration. He might spend the morning in his solar, a private room, reviewing accounts with his steward or planning for the spring planting. In the afternoon, he could practice his swordsmanship in a sheltered courtyard, go over battle strategies, or play chess with a visiting nobleman. He might even go hunting. A winter hunt is a sport for the nobility, a thrilling chase through the lord's private forest, seeking boar or deer, followed by a triumphant return to the castle. Lady Isabella's day is also occupied, but with different pursuits. She oversees the running of the vast household, a complex operation with dozens of servants. She and her ladies-in-waiting might spend hours on intricate embroidery, creating beautiful scenes on linen, a pastime that is both creative and a display of status. They would read from illuminated manuscripts, listen to a minstrel sing songs of chivalry and romance, or play music on a lute or a small harp. Dinner in the great hall is the centerpiece of the day. Long trestle tables are laid with fine cloths. Servants scurry back and forth, bringing platters piled high with roasted pheasant, venison stew, meat pies, and sweet puddings spiced with cinnamon and clove spices brought from faraway lands at great expense. The sounds are not of shivering silence, but of laughter, music, and the clatter of knives and goblets. Of course, life in the castle wasn't entirely without hardship. The stone corridors were still drafty, and illness could strike anyone, rich or poor. The isolation of winter could be felt even within these thick walls. But the fundamental difference was security. The lord and his family were secure from hunger, from the biting cold, and from the dangers of the wild. Their survival was not a daily struggle, but an assumption. So we have two worlds existing side by side, separated by just a wall of stone. Down in the village, winter is a brutal test of endurance, a time to be survived. Life is stripped down to its bare essentials, warmth, food, and family. Up in the castle, winter is a season of feasting, entertainment, and comfort, a time to be enjoyed. The deep snow that imprisons the villager is merely a beautiful backdrop for the nobleman. This stark contrast was the reality of the medieval world. A world of duty and privilege, hardship and plenty, all unfolding under the same cold winter sky. Thanks for watching. If you found this glimpse into the past interesting, please hit the like button and subscribe for more journeys back in time. See you in the next one. As winter continues across medieval England, castle life settles into its own slow and steady rhythm. Though the walls are thick and the gates strong, daily life inside the castle remains surprisingly simple. Morning light enters through narrow stone windows, casting pale beams across cold floors. Servants rise before sunrise once again. Their sleeping quarters are modest small shared rooms with straw mattresses placed close together for warmth. Unlike the Lord's private chamber, these spaces feel cramped but familiar. The first sound in the early hours is often the faint crackle of the kitchen fire being reignited. Castle kitchens are large compared to village hearths. High ceilings allow smoke to rise upward through vents in the roof. Long wooden tables line the walls, used for preparing bread, cutting meat, and kneading dough. The smell of fresh bread baking begins spreading slowly through the lower halls. Above the kitchen, in upper chambers, the Lord remains wrapped in thick blankets. His bed stands on a raised wooden frame. Heavy curtains hang around it to block cold drafts. Even so, the air inside the room remains cool. Stone does not easily release warmth. When he finally rises, a servant waits nearby with warm water carried in a wooden basin. Bathing during winter is limited. Water must be heated carefully over fire, and even then it cools quickly in stone rooms. Clothing for nobles differs in quality, but not in structure. Multiple layers remain necessary: fine wool tunics, soft leather boots, fur-lined cloaks draped over shoulders for added warmth. Despite wealth, comfort depends entirely on fire. In the great hall, preparations for the day begin quietly. Long tables are wiped clean, benches aligned carefully. The fire in the main hearth is built larger than in private chambers. Flames rise high, casting long moving shadows against tapestries that cover stone walls. Those tapestries depict hunting scenes, family crests, or stories from distant lands. But their purpose is practical as well. They trap warmth. Without them, cold air would press heavily against stone. Midday activities inside the castle remain calm during winter. Training in the courtyard is limited when snow covers the ground. Knights practice indoors, maintaining armor and sharpening swords. The sound of metal sliding against sharpening stones echoes softly. Guards rotate shifts along the battlements. Their cloaks flutter in winter wind. From high above, they observe silent fields stretching outward in every direction. Sometimes smoke from distant village cottages can be seen rising faintly against pale skies. Inside the castle chapel, candles flicker gently. Stone pillars support high ceilings. Light reflects softly across carved wooden pews. Even here, the air feels cold. Faith continues quietly during winter months. Evening meals inside the castle grow slightly more elaborate than those in village homes, yet still simple by modern standards. Roasted meats are served when available. Stews simmer slowly. Ale is poured into wooden cups. Servants move efficiently between tables, careful not to spill precious food. After dinner, entertainment occasionally fills the hall. A minstrel plays gentle melodies on a lute. Stories of ancient battles or heroic ancestors are told slowly. Laughter rises briefly, then settles. But even in moments of sound, the castle never feels loud. Stone absorbs and echoes softly. As night deepens, torches along corridors burn lower. Servants extinguish unnecessary lights to conserve resources. Footsteps become rare. Cold air thickens in long hallways. The Lord retreats to his chamber. Heavy wooden doors close firmly. Fireplaces are stoked one final time before sleep. Outside, snow drifts against the outer walls. Wind whistles faintly along battlements. The castle stands firm against weather, yet inside it remains vulnerable to the same cold that touches every village cottage. In the stillness of midnight, only guards remain awake. Their slow pacing creates rhythmic echoes along stone walkways. Breath visible, armor cold to the touch. Above them, stars stretch endlessly across dark sky. And inside thick stone walls, beneath layered wool and fur, castle life rests quietly once again. Power and status may separate lord from peasant, but winter treats all equally. And so the castle, strong and silent, surrenders to another long and peaceful night. As winter continues across medieval England, another quiet presence lingers beside cold and hunger, illness, not sudden or dramatic, but slow and uncertain. In a time without modern medicine, even small sicknesses required patience and care. Inside village cottages, mornings sometimes begin differently. Instead of rising quickly to tend fields or animals, a family member may remain beneath blankets, breathing slowly with a fever. The room grows quieter on such days. The fire is built slightly larger. Warmth becomes treatment. Herbs gathered during summer are brought forward from storage. Bundles of dried rosemary, sage, and thyme hang from wooden beams above the hearth. The village healer, often an older woman with years of experience, moves calmly between homes when needed. She carries small cloth pouches filled with crushed herbs and roots. Her knowledge is not written in books. It is remembered, passed down quietly through generations. Inside cottages, remedies are prepared slowly, water heated carefully. Herbs steeped into simple infusions. Steam rises softly into the cold air. There are no hospitals. Care happens at home. Family members sit beside the sick, placing cool cloths against warm foreheads. Silence becomes part of healing. Outside, daily life continues. Fields may rest under snow, but animals still require feeding. The village cannot pause entirely for illness, yet community support remains strong. Neighbors deliver small portions of food to families struggling. A loaf of bread left quietly by the door, a bundle of firewood stacked nearby. Kindness moves silently. Inside castles, illness is treated similarly, though with slightly more resources. Nobles have access to trained physicians when available. These physicians rely on basic understanding of balance, the belief that health depends on harmony within the body. Treatments remain simple: rest, warmth, herbal tonics. Sometimes bloodletting, performed cautiously with small instruments. Stone chambers feel colder when illness lingers. Even thick tapestries cannot fully protect against drafts. Servants move quietly along corridors, carrying warm broth or fresh linens. Night brings heightened awareness. In darkness, small sounds feel amplified. A cough echoes louder. A restless movement beneath blankets draws attention. Candlelight flickers beside bedsides. Time stretches slowly. Without clocks, families measure night by the fading of candles and the position of the moon outside narrow windows. Fear exists, but it is rarely spoken loudly. Life in medieval England has always carried uncertainty. Plagues have visited in past decades. Memories remain within older generations, yet even during illness, routine continues. Morning fire, animal care, meal preparation. Faith offers comfort. Church bells ring gently, calling villagers to prayer. Inside the chapel, candles burn steadily. Stone walls hold whispered hopes. As winter slowly weakens toward late season, recovery often follows naturally. Strong bodies endure. Fever fades gradually. Energy returns in small increments. The sick rise again, stepping carefully back into daily rhythm. Illness reminds medieval communities of fragility, but it also strengthens bonds. Families sit closer during recovery. Neighbors speak softer. Gratitude grows quietly. And so, even beneath the shadow of sickness, medieval England continues calmly, patiently, beneath cold skies and steady stars. Imagine this. You've just survived another long, harsh medieval winter. The nights were endless, the cold seeped into your bones, and food was scarce. You spent months huddled around a smoky fire in a dark, drafty hut, praying for the sun to return. Then, one day, you feel it. A subtle shift in the air. The frozen ground begins to thaw, the first brave snowdrops push through the earth, and the birdsong, long absent, finally returns. This wasn't just a change of seasons for people in medieval England. It was a profound, collective sigh of relief. It was the promise of life itself returning to the world. Winter in the Middle Ages was a brutal, unforgiving time. Without central heating, modern medicine, or grocery stores, survival was a daily struggle. The hungry gap, that perilous period in early spring when winter stores had dwindled but the new crops hadn't yet grown, was a time of genuine fear and hardship. Malnutrition was rampant, and a late frost could mean disaster for an entire village. So when spring finally, truly arrived, it wasn't just a pleasant change in the weather. It was a victory. A victory over darkness, over hunger, and over the ever-present threat of death. And this victory deserved a massive celebration. This transition from survival to abundance was the very soul of medieval spring festivals. It was a time when the strict, somber rules of Lent gave way to an explosion of joy and color. The world, both natural and human, was reawakening, and people were ready to embrace it with open arms. They saw the green shoots and blossoming flowers as powerful symbols of rebirth and fertility, not just in the fields, but in their own lives as well. This deep connection to the cycles of nature fueled some of the most vibrant and energetic celebrations of the entire year. And the king of all these spring festivals? May Day, on the eve of May 1st or May Eve, the real magic would begin. As dusk fell, villagers would head out into the woods and fields for a practice known as bringing in the May. This was an all-night affair, a jubilant expedition to gather flowers, greenery, and most importantly, branches and entire young trees. Hawthorn branches, known as May, were especially prized for their beautiful white and pink blossoms and their association with renewal and protection. This wasn't just about decorating. It was a ritual. By bringing the green, living essence of the wild woods back into their homes and villages, they were symbolically inviting life, growth, and fertility back into their community. It was a hands-on way of participating in the great reawakening of the earth. Imagine the scene as the sun rises on May Day morning. The villagers return, arms laden with flowers and green boughs. Their homes, which were stark and bare all winter, are suddenly transformed into fragrant, colorful bowers. But the centerpiece of the whole celebration is yet to come. The young men of the village would haul a massive, freshly cut tree back to the village green. This wasn't just any tree. This was the maypole. It was stripped of its lower branches, decorated with ribbons and flowers, and hoisted into place with great effort and ceremony. The maypole was the heart of the May Day festival. It was a powerful, multi-layered symbol. For some, it was a towering emblem of the world tree from ancient mythologies, connecting the earth to the heavens. For everyone, it was a potent symbol of life, growth, and male fertility, standing tall in the center of the community. Once erected, the real fun began. Dancers, often holding the ends of long ribbons attached to the top of the pole, would weave intricate patterns as they danced around it. A beautiful, living spectacle of community and celebration. Music would fill the air pipes, drums, and fiddles, driving the rhythm for circle dances and merrymaking that could last all day. But the maypole was just the beginning. May Day was a full-blown festival of characters and traditions. One of the most important figures was the May Queen, or the Queen of the May. A young woman from the village would be chosen to preside over the day's festivities. Adorned with a crown of fresh flowers, she symbolized Flora, the Roman goddess of spring, and the purity and fertility of the reawakened earth. She was the living embodiment of spring's beauty and promise. Alongside the May Queen, you'd often find the Lord of Misrule or the May King, sometimes represented by a figure known as the Green Man or Jack in the Green. This character, often covered head to toe in a wicker frame adorned with fresh leaves and foliage, represented the untamed, wild spirit of nature. He was a creature of the woods, a symbol of the raw, untamable life force that drove the changing of the seasons. His appearance in the village was a reminder of the deep, mystical connection between the human world and the natural world. And of course, no festival was complete without food and drink. After months of meager rations, May Day was a time for feasting. Tables would be laden with whatever the new season had to offer: fresh cheeses, custards, breads, and special May Day cakes. And there was plenty of ale. This wasn't just about having a party. It was a communal act of sharing the first fruits of the earth's renewed bounty. It was a celebration of having made it through the hungry gap and a toast to the promise of a plentiful harvest to come. These traditions were deeply woven into the fabric of medieval life. They were a way of making sense of the world, of managing the anxieties of agricultural life, and of building strong community bonds. But not everyone was a fan. As the medieval period gave way to the early modern era, and with the rise of Puritanism, these celebrations came under fire. Puritans viewed the maypole as a pagan idol and the merrymaking, dancing, and drinking as sinful and immoral. In 1644, Parliament actually banned all maypoles in England, calling them a heathenish vanity. The joyful celebrations were suppressed, driven underground, and for a time it seemed like the old ways might be lost forever. But you can't keep a good celebration down. After the restoration of the monarchy, the traditions came roaring back. People were eager to reclaim their festivities, and maypoles were re-erected with defiant joy. While the celebrations may have changed and evolved over the centuries, the core spirit of May Day, that uncontainable joy at the return of spring, endured. Many of the traditions we've talked about, from maypole dancing to crowning a May Queen, have survived in some form to this day, celebrated in towns and villages across England and beyond. They are a living link to our medieval ancestors and their deep, instinctual need to celebrate the triumphant return of light and life. So the next time you feel that first warm breeze of spring, see the first daffodils bloom, or maybe even spot a May Day festival in your local park, take a moment. Remember that what you re-feeling is the same profound sense of relief and joy that a medieval farmer felt hundreds of years ago. It's a connection that stretches back through time, a shared human response to the incredible, life-affirming miracle of spring's return. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more stories from history. See you next time.